need to be cautious with Nikita Tryamkin. Now, that comes with its implications, and you may be thinking, okay, what do you mean by cautious? Cautious as in where we play him? Cautious as in when we acquire him back? What exactly do you mean when you say that we need to be cautious with this player, Lego? And we'll get into that right here, because Harman Dayal of The Athletic recently posted a really deep article about Nikita Tryamkin. And there are quotes from his agent, Todd Diamond, that we're going to talk about here. Now, that's not new. We've talked about Todd Diamond quotes in the past. In fact, we've made several videos about Todd Diamond and Tryamkin over the past, year and a half, pretty much. But some of these quotes are a little bit different. And for the sake of Athletic being The Athletic, I'm not going to read excerpts from the article. Instead, we're just going to take a look at a few quotes that actually stand out publicly. Because this is a public YouTube video, I don't want to give out paid-for information for free, paid-for journalism for free. But what is free is Harman Dayal's Twitter account. And when he posted the link to this article, he gave up 2 quotes in the tweet itself. And I think these 2 quotes provide some really big indicators as to what the Vancouver Canucks may need to be cautious about in the first place. Here's a quote from Todd Diamond. Nikita is not happy being in Yekaterinburg because he's not being used like he was expected to be by the team. He wants to try in the NHL once again. Okay, so before we proceed, let's just lay down what exactly we have here. Nikita Tryamkin wants to come back to the NHL because in the KHL, he's not being used like how he wanted to be. He wasn't being given the minutes. The way it appears, it looks like Nikita Tryamkin went back to the KHL because he wanted to be a very relied upon, a very important mainstay part of the Avtomobilist Yekaterinburg's defensive core. But that's not what he's been doing. He's been given less minutes. If we go over to Nikita Tryamkin's KHL page, you can see that Nikita Tryamkin is averaging almost 20 minutes a night this year. Going to his game log, he's got a ton of games. He's at 20, 21, 22 minutes, some down there in the 18s and the 19s, but overall, he averages out to about 20 minutes of ice time per game this season. And if you take a look at that, that's like prime top 4, top 3 minutes right there. It's not an overload 22, 23 minutes a night like a Quinn Hughes in Vancouver would get, but Tryamkin is indeed being played as a legitimate contributor to the Avtomobilist Yekaterinburg. So, to me, there's kind of a little caution light going on in my head when we hear these quotes that he's not happy being in Yekaterinburg because he's not being used like how he was expected to be used. You're being played 20 minutes a night. What more would you want? Do you want top 2 minutes? Because let me tell you, if Nikita Tryamkin is not getting top 2 minutes in the KHL for Avtomobilist, then I don't know if he's going to be getting top 2 minutes with the Vancouver Canucks when he comes back. Because he is going to come back. That's pretty much going to happen now. It's been in the media. Everybody's been talking about it. There's no way in my mind that it doesn't happen. But there's something weird to me when I take a look at this and I say, okay, Tryamkin is going to leave the KHL because he's not being happy with how he's being used and he wants, probably, more ice time. Because the reason Tryamkin left Vancouver in the first place was the same reason. He wasn't being used like how he wanted to be used, and he wasn't being given the ice time. If Tryamkin comes back, and he's expecting to be used more than how he was used back when he was in Vancouver a few years ago, I'm sorry, buddy, but that's just not gonna happen. This team's better than it was before. Back when we had Tryamkin in the first time around, we didn't have Quinn Hughes. We didn't have the decor that we have today. Tryamkin, and I said this all the way back in my video a few weeks ago, is a guy who could probably come into the Vancouver Canucks as a 6-7 replacement. He can be in the same realm as a Ben or a Fantenberg. I don't see him being better than that. So, hearing about this kind of irks me the wrong way. Hearing about how he wants to try in the NHL again because he's expecting a little bit more than what he got the first time around. How he wants to leave the KHL because he's unsatisfied with 20 minutes a night. There's something about that doesn't feel right. So, it's why I'm saying here the Vancouver Canucks need to be a little bit cautious when it comes to bringing Tryamkin back. Now, don't get me wrong. If Tryamkin comes here, he plays like a top 2. He plays like a legitimate top 4. He outperforms the other left-handed D we have in that spot, Alex Edler, Quinn Hughes. If he does that, I'll eat my words and I'll say, yeah, give the guy 25 minutes a night. If he deserves it, we should give it to him. But just based off of how he's been doing in the KHL, how he was the last time he was here with Vancouver, it'd be difficult for me to imagine that. Again, I don't want to say that that's out of the realm of possibility, but, it doesn't feel like something that I would foresee happening. Because I'll tell you this, Tryamkin wants more than what he's been getting in the KHL. He's been getting 20 minutes a night in the KHL. Do you think he's going to come into Vancouver immediately next season and start playing 21, 22, 23 minutes of time on ice per game like a Quinn Hughes is right now? Again, if he's able to do that, sure. But is that likely? I don't know. I really don't. And this team is a different team, yes, than what we had last time we had Tryamkin, but also the coach is different as well. Willie Desjardins is not Travis Green, and we know there have been some differences in how those two like to manage their teams. So, it'll be really interesting to me to see how Tryamkin comes over, how he translates after being in the KHL for so long, and how he fares. Because based off of this, based off of him wanting to leave the KHL, based off of what we saw last time he was here, if he is unsatisfied, I wouldn't be surprised if Tryamkin left again. And maybe that's just my big brain 4D chess intergalactic foreseeable future kind of lenses going on here, and me just pulling something out of thin air. But as a fan of this hockey team, and as somebody who has been watching these players, it's a legitimate concern for me, especially when I hear the reason he's leaving the KHL is because he's unsatisfied with what he's been given. Does that make sense? I want you to tell me if that makes sense, because if I'm just pulling things out of thin air and it doesn't make sense, let me know. Please assuage my insecurities on this situation and tell me why it's going to be okay. Again, the one scenario I can think about is if Tryamkin is ultimately a god out there in the ice, and that will make everything okay, but that is realistically unforeseeable, so I don't want to put any labels on that. But, yeah, Harman Dayal, man, that's only a discussion on his article from 2 quotes that he posted on Twitter. So, if you want to read more of this article, I'll leave a link in the description. It's The Athletic. You know what The Athletic's about. If you have the membership, read it, because you're paying for the articles, and it's legitimately good quality reads. But, Tryamkin, man, I don't know what's going to happen. I do want to see a scenario where the guy absolutely just comes in and goes on a tear, but it's unlikely to me. What's more likely to me is the idea of him leaving again, possibly. Just based off of how he left us the first time, how it looks like he's leaving the KHL this time. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with a player wanting more out of himself. That's not what I'm trying to say here at all. But when it comes to a player who does indeed want more out of himself, but who's already been given quite a lot, 20 minutes of ice time per night in the KHL could be a lot to some people. So that kind of rubs me the wrong way. Imagine if Vasily Podkolzin was being given 20 minutes a night. We'd never hear the end of how he's doing great. So yeah, that's just some food for thought before tonight's action against the St. Louis Blues. It's the Battle of the West here tonight. We'll make a video a little bit later today, depending on how that game goes. If it's a noteworthy video where there's something actually worth talking about, we'll talk about it. But for the foreseeable future, just feast on this Tryamkin video, because this kind of has some ideas that I wanted to get out there. So I hope you enjoyed this video. 99, and bye.